Hi guys, and welcome back to Worley's Watch Box. Today we'll be doing another watch review, and I think it's a rather cool watch. It's the Bulova Devil Diver reissue. You know, it's a watch that's classic for the 666 on the dial, hence the nickname Devil Diver. And it is really just a cool watch, and it does a really good job reinterpreting the watch from the past, the one that was, well, the original one from the 70s. It just does a great job, mimicking that same design, but with a little bit of tweaks added to it. Might not be the best of tweaks, but unfortunately, with reissues, we kind of see that. Some are done really well, some aren't done well, and for the most part, I think this has done a good job, as I said, reinterpreting the one from the past. But we'll take a look at those negatives that have really stuck out to me. So with that said, let's dive right into it. So here is the Devil Diver up close, and this is model number 98B320. And, we'll get into the details here in a second, but, just by looking at this, it is a really, really cool watch. I just really love the way this watch looks. Everything from the case design to the dial and to the bezel here, which the bezel's, a little different. It's not that, regular aluminum insert. It's got like a glass topping here. I'm not sure what the material is underneath, but it just looks really, really cool. So, you know what? We'll start off the review just like every other review with the timekeeping, and it's been keeping a good time throughout the day for me. It does use a Miyota movement. Now, it doesn't have hacking. I do wish it does. And it is a reissue, so I don't think the original one had hacking. So technically, it's period correct. But, sometimes adding the hacking in is just a nice little feature for a modern reissue. I think aesthetically wise, they should keep it pretty much 100% true to the original. But if it's under the hood, adding hacking, doesn't really hurt anything, nor take away from its aesthetic appeal and the image and likeness of the previous one. But it is what it is. So moving on to the functionality, this watch gets a 10 out of 10. It's got a screw down crown. The loom on it is wonderful. It's not Seiko loom, but it's still pretty damn good. I love the date magnifier there. I guess you can add that into its functionality. Well, I do and I don't like the date magnifier, but we'll get into that later. And it's just a good all-around tool watch. Really, really like it. Now, moving on to the bracelet. It's a pretty darn good bracelet. It was one of the things that kind of stuck out to me when purchasing the watch. I really liked the way it looked. It's not quite a Jubilee bracelet. I'm not sure really what you'd call it, but it does feel nice. A little jingly, but nothing too bad. My only gripe with this would be the clasp. It's got a push button deployant there, and it's just a stamped clasp, nothing fancy, but kind of cheapens the rest of the brace a little bit. Overall it's a solid feeling bracelet. It does use split pins, which I'm actually a fan of. I know that's the cheaper route to go, but it's so much easier to size bracelets when they have the split friction pins in there, over a pin and collar system. So I'm not going to gripe about that one bit. Overall, solid bracelet though, nice and comfortable. I will admit I do need to add a link to it for my ever-growing wrist, but that's a different story. So, moving on to the finishing. As you can see, this is a very shiny watch. Now, the original one, I believe, was all polished, just like this one. Now, if you were to look at the Accutron version of this, I believe it was a brushed finish, but we're not reviewing the Accutron version, even though it does look very, very similar except, instead of Bulova there, it says Accutron. But the finishing over this, yeah, it's all high polished except for the center links on the bracelet. And, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention this on the bracelet. These are all individual pieces here. From here to here, 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 here. Alright, so let's take a look at the crystal, and it has a double domed or double curved box sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating, and it looks really, really good. I'm kind of a sucker for domed crystals anyway, and this one really hit it out of the park. Really like the way this one looks, and if you notice on the date magnifier there at the 3 o'clock, it is actually under the crystal, which is, I think, a really cool feature and adds character to this watch. You don't see that very often. Most date magnifiers sit above the glass, but this one's underneath, and you avoid getting the gunk and all that nasty crap around the corners, and that's not the main reason I like it, but it's a bonus. It's a bonus. But yeah, I just think it looks so neat and so cool. Just, you don't see that very often. So really, really like the crystal of this overall. However, even though the date magnifier might be one of my favorite things about this crystal, it also has a downfall. So if you look, and I think it's pretty evident on camera, that it is a little off. I don't think it quite lines up with the date window there. And for a watch of this price point, and we'll get into that here in a second actually, I think it should be better than that. It really should be better than that. There shouldn't be this big of a misalignment, and I think it's pretty clear that it's not lined up right. Now, I did get this manufacturer's refurbished, so maybe that's why, but isn't it supposed to be, like new from the factory with no faults, from the factory if it's been refurbished? So I don't quite understand how this passed QC there, unless they're just not, inspecting it that thoroughly. But, otherwise this crystal would get a 10 out of 10, but I got to dock it. I got to dock it for that misalignment there. Just not good attention to detail there. Now, moving on to the case design. This kind of makes up for it. It looks really cool. Now, if you remember back to my Seiko Turtle review, I said I wasn't a huge fan of, the round case design, but with this I make an exception. The turtle case is rather bland, kind of boring. This is sculpted in a whole different way. The curvature there of the integrated lugs, it just looks really, really good. I love the look of this case. I like the elevated look of the bezel. It's got a nice signed crown there. Just really, really impressed with the design of this case. So 10 out of 10 there. Now, with that, the size, I got to ding it a little bit. This is 44 millimeters. Why they went with 44, I have no idea. I think the original one was closer to 40, and even their limited edition one, which was the special orange dial version, was 41. So why they decided to make this version along with the green version, I thought there was one more, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but why they decided to make these 3 millimeters bigger is beyond me. There's just absolutely no reason for it, and it's just overly large. And looking at it on my wrist here, I can pull it off, I think, because of the integrated lugs with the case design. It's all one sort of unibody design, and the lug to lug isn't terrible. The lugs aren't very protruding, so I think I can get away with it. But it's just still, it is a beast of a watch. It really is. But yeah, just wish it was a little smaller, truer to the original, or even their limited edition remake that came about at around the same time. So, gotta ding it for that. Now, this dial looks really, really good. You know, and it's so different too. You have these glass tubes, at least I think they're glass, held in by prongs that are filled with lume. And it just looks really, really good. It's very unique. And it was one of the major sellers on why I bought this watch. You know, this watch is just so different, you know, with the under the glass date magnifier and then these markers. It just looks really unique. It's very different. It's cool. It's retro. I really like it. And then you have the contrasting red crosshairs there. It just looks great. And then you have your classic snorkel there with the classic 666 Devil Diver marker there. Just looks really, really good. I love, love, love the dial on this. Now, my only drawback would be the applied logo. So on the original, they were all independent letters that were applied on there. Well, this looks like it's one piece, and I think they did that to probably cut costs a little bit. But this is not a cheap watch. Well, if you were to buy it from Bulova, it's not a cheap watch. And, you know, you see the kind of polished lettering there, but then in between them is just this bland, I don't even know what it is. It plastic? I don't know what it's made out of. But it's not polished at all, and it just looks very poorly done, kind of lazily just put in there. I mean, even the original one had the independent letters that were applied in there. So I don't understand why they went this route. It doesn't look good. It doesn't. It takes away from what is really a great dial, all in all. So that would be my only gripe with that one. Now, moving on to the value of this. So I picked this up, manufacturer's refurbished, I think for around $260, which I think is 100% worth it. And you can get it on the used market, I think, for maybe around 300-ish, 200 to 300-ish, in between that range. So, you know, I don't think you'll get it less for 200, but you could find it in the low twos to high twos, anywhere between 2 to 300, which in that price range, still totally worth it. Now, where it gets a little hazy is if you were to buy this full retail price, which is, I think right now it's on sale on Bulova's website for like $600 some dollars, and full retail's a little north of 700. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, especially for what you're getting. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a great watch, and do I recommend it? Absolutely, I recommend it. But it's not a $600 watch. It really is not. It's nice, but it's nothing spectacular. If you were to get it in between that $200 to $300 mark, is it great value for money? Yes, it is. But you know, I would even think 400 is worth it. But to pay anything above, I would say 450 for this, it's not worth it. It doesn't host a high-end movement. It doesn't even have hacking. It's just, I just don't think it's worth the full retail price, which is why a lot of times on the used market you won't find them going for above 400. You know, you can easily find them from 2 to 300, as I've already said a couple times. So, you know, value-wise, I will give it an 8 out of 10 if you can find it manufacturer's refurbished or a good price on the used market. But new, I would stay away from it. So with that, let's get into our scoring now. So the timekeeping, we're going to give that a 9 out of 10. It's been keeping good time for me. The movement, a 7. You know, like I just got done saying, nothing high-end. It's just a basic Miyota movement. The functionality, 10 out of 10. I mean, it performs well. The loom is great. Screw down crown, good bezel action, perfect. The bracelet, give it an 8. It's a solid feeling bracelet. I just not a huge fan of the clasp. The finishing, an 8. You know, it's pretty much all high polish all the way around, except for, you know, the case back and the center links on the bracelet. But, you know, it gets an 8. Nothing fancy. I wish there was some brushing involved, but, you know, can't have everything. Moving on to the crystal. You know, like I said, this would have been a 10 out of 10 easily if it wasn't for that misalignment with the date window and the date magnifier. That's just a little bit inexcusable for me, especially if you're going to pay full retail for this watch, which I did not. I did not. Full disclosure there, but just something I can't give a pass on. The case design, 10 out of 10. Absolutely love it. I know it kind of contradicts what I said about the turtle case in a previous video, but I just think this is a much better sculpted case, and I love the dimensions of it, so 10 out of 10. Now, moving on to the size, and when I said dimensions, I didn't necessarily mean the width of the case. I like the different levels of the case, per se. You know, the side sculptures and everything with that. Well, side sculptures? What the hell am I saying? I don't know, but I think you'll get the point. It's just a beautifully made case. Anyway, moving on. The size, give it a 7. It's way too big. It's bigger than the original. It's bigger than their limited edition reissue. Why they made it 44 millimeters, I have no idea. Give that a 7 out of 10. Now the dial, you know, it's great except for that applied logo. They kind of really missed the mark on that. Otherwise, it's a great dial. Really like it. And then with the value, 8 out of 10. You know, I got to dock it a little bit for that full MSRP price. That's a bit ridiculous in my opinion. But like I said earlier, if you can find it between the $200 to $300 mark, it's perfect. Go for it. So with that, it gets a total score of an 85 out of 100, just 1 point south of the other vintage reissue, the Seiko SRP 773, the Turtle. So with that, that concludes this review. I hope you guys liked it. Please leave your thoughts and comments down below, and hope you subscribe. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.